Okay guys, so I have to admit something. I just switched my main note-taking and project management tool from Notion back to Obsidian. Which I know is funny because not long ago I made a whole video about why I moved away from Obsidian and switched to Notion. So you might ask, why the heck did I switch back? Now, the reason is that my workflow changed quite a lot recently, especially when I started to use more terminal-based AI agents, local tools, and so on. And when you then try to use tools like Notion, but also other developer-focused tools like Confluence or ClickUp, Airtable, and so on, they all work great out of the box. But the moment you want to bring your own AI agents, your existing local tools, or your custom workflows in, this is where things get complicated. Because these bigger note-taking and project management platforms are mostly all cloud-based, and increasingly they also want you to use their own AI assistants, of course with their own subscriptions, and in their own closed ecosystem, something like Apple tries to do all the time. And sure, you can technically sometimes connect this with MCP servers, APIs, and CLI apps, but in my opinion, it is still clunky, relies on a cloud connection, and sometimes it's really slow and not portable. So that's why I have decided to quit using those kind of tools and move my workflows more to local tools, more open tools, and in that way Obsidian just fits pretty well. It just uses simple Markdown files. Because here's the thing, if your notes are just Markdown files on your computer, they are super easy to work with by both humans and also machines. So you can easily just use it with any coding agent like Pi, Codex, Claude Code, or any other local LLM supporting agent in your terminal. And you can still work with your entire knowledge base system, simple and efficient. So that's the main reason why Obsidian became interesting for me again. Not because it is the better productivity app, but as a modular interface on top of Markdown. And together with my own Pi Agent plugin that I have written, or honestly, I should better say vibe coded in Obsidian, this became the perfect productivity tool for me again. So in this video, I'd like to share this with you. I'm going to show you the new Pi Agent Obsidian plugin that I have created and how you can use this to level up your productivity system as well without having to use any vendor login at all. So you can enjoy complete freedom with any open source tools or your existing AI subscriptions or local LLMs that you want to use. Once you start using agents and tools like Pi, the next question is, where does the agent actually get current external information from? Because my Obsidian Vault is local Markdown, but sometimes I want Pi to search the web or check Google results, pull structured search data, and so on. And SERP API, the sponsor of today's video, is a search results API for developers. So it gives you clean, structured results from Google, YouTube, Bing, and many, many more services, so that all of your apps, dashboards, automations, or AI agents can easily work with real search data instead of using a fragile browser scraper. For example, I've just created a small skill with the SERP API interface so that my agent can use it directly from any workflow. That means I can ask Pi to search Google for a topic, maybe compare sources for my researching notes, or pull YouTube search results to see which video topics I have already covered or what other creators are covering, and then even collect results for deeper technical research from the web. It is really super cool. And the best is I don't have to build and maintain all the scraping logic myself, because SERP API handles captchas, proxy rotation, and changing layouts completely in the background, so I can really just focus on the workflow I actually want to build. It is also super fast, so the results come back in around just 1 or 2 seconds. And the cool thing is the pricing is quite flexible. There's even a free plan to get started. So in my opinion, SERP API is the perfect expansion for AI workflows to search reliable information from qualified sources. And if you want to try it out yourself, just use the link in the description box down below or scan the QR code on the screen to get started with 250 free credits. Alright guys, so now before we start looking into some specific AI workloads and how exactly I'm using the Pi Obsidian plugin, I want to start from the beginning and show you some of the changes that I have made to my productivity system. I know I probably keep changing it every year, so It might look a bit different compared to my previous videos about Obsidian or even Notion, but I think this new structure allows me to better work with my HomeLab and have a better documentation and operation instruction notes for my AI agents or for myself if I'm managing my HomeLab servers. So here, for example, this is the main directory where all the information for my HomeLab, it is written in simple Markdown files, so nothing complicated. I'm still using some of the plugins that I've shown you in earlier videos, such as the data view, that allows you to better query your data across the vault and adjust custom JavaScripts to better customize the look and feel of your nodes. So of course, AI helps a lot with creating these instructions as well. I might show you a few things later on, but here you can see the overview of all of my HomeLab nodes. For example, all of the services that I'm managing in my HomeLab, and then I'm using the new Obsidian base tables. So these allow you to add different views for tables, layouts. You can even add Kanban and calendar when you're using the right community plugins. Probably I might do another video on community plugins updated at some point. If you want to see that, please leave me a comment, because there are a couple of new community plugins in a new marketplace format. It's pretty cool, and I'm also using this for developing my own Pi Agent plugin as well. But again, back to my HomeLab. So here you can see I'm managing all the services, like my Authentic repository, then CheckMK, Cloudflare, Cockpit. Of course, I'm also managing frontmatter sections here that you can use in the tables to filter or better visualize things like the environment, if it's a testing or production environment, the platform, the Git repository, then how I'm managing secrets in GitLab or locally or any other secret management platforms, priority. I've not really filled in this. For example, DNS probably should become critical, because I need DNS for almost everything in my HomeLab. Then, of course, the status with the description and so on. All the fields in the table are basically coming from these frontmatter sections that you define in the 3 dashes, and then you can easily just add text in here. It's super simple and easy. Again, this is really just plain Markdown file, and I'm using some community plugins to add visualizations to these frontmatter sections or to query certain information. I try to add a template structure for all these things, where I have defined the specific structure, how these documents should look like. So when an AI agent needs to modify a service documentation, or when I say, hey, can you create a new service, that the AI agent has the specific template in the correct format that I want it to be. The same I'm also managing for infrastructure. So here you can see all of my physical and virtual infrastructure machines, such as my firewall or my Kubernetes clusters, the storage server, backup server, the free Proxmox nodes, and my virtual servers and my Sophos switch. So there's also the IP addresses that I'm tracking here, the platform, whether this is a VM or an appliance or a bare metal Kubernetes, whatever it is, infrastructure type. Also critical, I probably should also put the Proxmox nodes and raise the priority to, I'd say, high. It's not really, not everything is super critical, but these 3 nodes are quite important for my lab. Also, IPAM is quite interesting. So here I've documented all my networks, my VLANs, all the IP addresses for all of my servers. So that when I'm searching my HomeLab for IP addresses, I have a good understanding of where things are located and what IP addresses are used. But yeah, I don't think I need to show you each and everything. Let me show you a few examples how AI can help me managing this. I've just opened the directory where my Obsidian Vault is, so where all the Markdown files are simply stored. So for example, when I do an ls HomeLab, you can see these are just the plain Markdown files and directories in the vault. And when I now open the Pi agent in this vault, the agent now has direct access to all the Markdown files. And by the way, if you have not watched my Pi agent video, I will link you this in the description, so that tells you how to use this tool. It's a super slim and tiny and fast AI agent that runs directly in your terminal. And this does not really use any complicated MCP servers or a bunch of different tools. It really has some core utilities like reading, writing files, running ls, grep, and executing shell commands and stuff like that. And it does not pop up any permission questions or something like this, which can be at some point a bit destructive. So you have to be aware of, if you say, hey, please destroy my entire infrastructure, it probably will do this without asking for another confirmation. So be aware of this. But at the same time, this is also super, super fast, and it can work with your existing Codex or ChatGPT Plus and Pro subscription, GitHub Copilot subscription. It also supports local LLMs if you want. When you're using local LLMs processed at your machine, there's literally no connection to any external service at all. So you can really keep your entire structure, your nodes, your documents under your control, which is pretty cool. So, for example, I can easily attach any files as context. For example, HomeLab DNS. And I say, describe how to manage DNS. If you would ask an AI agent like ChatGPT without any context, this question, it would give you a general answer. But now, because I attached my local documentation, it comes back with useful information. This is a way how you can easily work with Markdown files and AI agents, even in your terminal. And for example, I can also do the same with HomeLab IPAMs. So when I want to know what's the next free IP address in my HomeLab for production VMs. So let's see what this comes up with. It immediately finds the IPAM file here. You can see it even uses simple inline Python scripts to do some data transformation. You can see how fast this is because it really is just an inline simple script, and now it comes back with useful information. The lowest currently unassigned IP address is 1020.7. So yeah, this is still free, but it appears to be the next free documented IP. If you prefer continuing newer VM ranges, then use 1020.022. So really cool, and this is how fast I can get this information. Of course, I can also go further down this rabbit hole and say, okay, please can you reserve this for a new server that I'm installing or whatnot. And this is the way how I keep my documentation up to date. And this is much better than using Notion with their own AI subscriptions or whatever. I can use the tools that I'm already using for managing my infrastructure or for developing code or for any other daily workflow. That is the power of Markdown files. So I absolutely love this. But this is only half of the story, because I've also created something that is called skills and prompts. So a skill is basically a small reusable instruction package for agents. In Pi, for example, this is usually stored in a skill directory with a simple skill.md markdown file. I've also created a symlink from my Obsidian vault to the Pi Agent skill directory so that I keep my prompts and my skills managed in Obsidian, so I can easily update all the skills that I've written. Pi Agent has direct access to this, no matter if it's running in Obsidian via my plugin or in the terminal. So this is pretty cool. I just started Pi without skills because otherwise it would use it automatically. But when I just run Pi with skills, it immediately knows how to connect to my Apple Mail, my Apple reminders, my boilerplate CLI. And here is a skill that I have specifically written for my HomeLab. So when you go in this skill file, you can see that it starts with two frontmatter sections, a name, and the description is used by the agent to find out whether to use this skill. So sometimes it can find it out by itself, depending on the description, and if that probably has something to do with the task that you want it to do. I will later demonstrate how exactly that works. But here you can see I've described what is my HomeLab, how I'm managing things, that I'm using a hypervisor behind a firewall, I'm using infrastructure as code, I'm using CI/CD, repositories, internal DNS, proxies, and monitoring, logging. So I try to, again, document as much as possible in a clean and specific format. So these are very precise instructions for the AI agent so that it knows where is the Obsidian vault, where I'm managing my HomeLab, how can I access this, so that it knows about the different sections and can use the templates. For example, project management is happening there, and I'm using it for this and that, and this is a template. Here are also rules and guidelines, like do not duplicate service-specific deployments or resources in the details in the skill. Keep those details in the service node, or for operational tasks, start with irrelevant root documentation, then inspect the owning repository if needed. Prefer documented infrastructure as code workflows or ad hoc runtime changes. So that means that the AI agent, when reading this, knows that I want most of my infrastructure and resources to be managed in IAC, such as Terraform, OpenTofu, and so on. Most of my important repositories like GitLab, DNS, super important, Proxmox, OpenSense, Grafana, Prometheus, Traffic, and so on. And yeah, repositories may, but do not necessarily have to contain the following subdirectories. So that tells the AI agent that whenever I need Ansible playbooks for a service, to manage this in its own directory. Okay, so let's go back to my terminal. Let me show you what happens, for example, when I say /skill HomeLab and say, I'd love to create a new VM in my HomeLab. Show me an onboarding plan plus checklist. And let's see what comes back with. Of course, I have not written a specific onboarding guide, so the result might vary from time to time. But you could technically do this. If you want a specific format for an onboarding guide, just write a template and define that in the skill. But here you can see that the AI agent, by reading the HomeLab skill, knows exactly where to find the relevant information. So it reads the Proxmox documentation. Then it knows how I'm naming things. For example, Server Pro 2, App Test 1, Kubernetes Prod 1, Worker, etc. It knows where my Proxmox nodes are. So pick a Proxmox node where to run this, capacity planning, IPAM. So it knows, choose a VLAN subset from the IPAM documentation, a slug.home.ccrave.de provisioning approach, monitoring, backup restore documentation. So it knows that at the end of the day, it needs to create a documentation under infrastructure slug.md with the specific frontmatter section so that I immediately can see that in the table here when I say, hey, please create this. I'm not doing this right now, but these are all the things that it knows from the skill. And I can now go on and say, how and where would you manage this VM to give me a better recommendation how exactly to do this. So here I would primarily manage this through the HomeLab Proxmox repository with documentation in the Obsidian Vault. Here it describes the lifecycle, VM creation, documentation. So these are the frontmatter fields, the IP address, the monitoring that should be included, such as Prometheus and Grafana. I can also say, show me the IAC files that you would create for me and ask if you need additional information. So this now should hopefully come back with Terraform files. And yeah, so that's exactly what's happening. It uses Proxmox VMQMO, so the Proxmox Terraform provider that allows me to manage a new VM in infrastructure as code. It also found the Ubuntu template because that's my preferred operating system. Here the description, memory, and so on. A DNS record, so it knows to automatically create a DNS record and how to create this. And Netbox resource if needed. Yeah, because I'm managing some of my IPAM documentation and machine documents in Netbox. Add Obsidian infrastructure nodes, information I need from you. So I need to tell it the VM slug, the description, environment, and so on. Of course, I could now go on and ask, hey, give me some template for this, or what would you add as a name or IP address? What is the next free IP address? Pick on your own or whatever. So this is really different from a generic AI task, like how do I generally create a virtual machine? Then it would come back with Microsoft Hyper-V, VMware, whatever. And of course, I've just used chat to demonstrate this, but I could easily just go on and say, create this. Then the Pi agent would connect to my Git repository. It would use the credentials that I've added to the system, and it could easily create a new Git repo, deploy the machine. I've recently asked it to create some services like, I don't know, Arcane, for example, is a Docker manager that you will see in one of my future videos. And I just said, hey, please, can you create an Arcane production environment in my HomeLab? And it literally had done it the way I want. So this is really absolutely amazing. One tip that I also want to give you with this, there's one challenge that Markdown files have where systems like Notion still have advantages. And this is when you start to manage entities or items in frontmatter. For example, here you can see I have many different services that can be filtered by environment, platform, repository, and so on. But Markdown, technically, it needs to go through all the files, read these files, and find the information you're looking for. And I just found out there's a super useful tool that helps with querying Markdown by frontmatter. This is called mdbasequery. mdbasequery is absolutely amazing. It's a simple tool that is an Obsidian basis compatible query engine for Markdown vaults. So you can easily just install and run this small CLI program in the terminal and then use this to query for specific frontmatter sections, filter by date, filter by names, and output different fields in formats. Pretty similar to something like SQL queries. For example, when I want to query my HomeLab projects and filter it by type is equal project and repository platform is GitHub, so that it shows me all the projects with these specific values, and it's selecting the file path, it's selecting the status and the repository, and the output format is Markdown and limit by 8 results. So then I quickly get back this table. You can also add different outputs, for example, CSV here. So this is really amazing. And what I have done is, when we go back to Obsidian and open my Obsidian skill, so here I have described how to work with vaults, how the Markdown files are structured, how Obsidian links are structured, so the backlinks and how this is working, and about querying. So here I've added an instructions to say use mdbasequery for searching, filtering, and reporting on nodes by frontmatter properties instead of using find or rip grab, etc. Here's an example. Here are some useful filter examples, such as publish dates, is empty functions, and stuff like that. And this way, my agent can also query information from my vault in a super easy and simple way. So for example, when I go back to Pi, I probably just have to raise the thinking level a bit, because sometimes the AI agent with low thinking mode does not use multiple skills at the same time. But when you increase the thinking level, you can also say questions like, for example, list all my HomeLab services where I'm managing secrets locally. So let's see what happens. It's a pretty general question, but because the agent has access to the different skills, it knows, okay, for inspecting HomeLab services that is stored in an Obsidian vault, I probably should use both of these skills. So you can see I've not really specified the skills. It just knows that by the descriptions. And then, because it uses the Obsidian skill, it knows that it needs to use an mdbasequery and query the frontmatter section specifically for my secret management local, because I have defined that in the template and in the skill. And then you can see it quickly comes back with the result here. And then I can go on and say, hey, can you transform the secrets at GitLab secrets for these repositories or whatever. So this is really nice. By the way, there's one thing that I want to say. If you're familiar with my boilerplates project and my template library, I will also put you a link to this in the description below, but here is the library where I'm managing all these templates. I'm planning to add a new static format so that we can share templates for something like skills, for example, because I thought when I have taken the time to write all this stuff, maybe I should share it with you. For example, the Obsidian skill is something pretty general, and we can improve this as a community. So why not just add some boilerplates for these skills here? Might be useful. So I'll start that somewhere in the next week. So you need to give me some time to prepare it, but I think we could benefit a lot from this as a community. Again, you do not have to actually use Obsidian. You could also use this with Markdown files in your terminal agent and so on. But yeah, let's come to the next point. Currently, I've just shown you how to use Pi Agent in the terminal, but I also had the thought, well, when Pi Agent is so amazing, I'm using this for almost everything. Could I not just integrate the Pi Agent in the Obsidian app itself? So what I have created is a community plugin called Pi Agent. Of course, I will link you this in the description. And this is a plugin that you can easily add to your Obsidian. And then you can use the Pi Agent CLI to work with this. There are some requirements. You need to install Pi Agent, the Pi coding agent, locally on your device. Of course, I've also made this open source, so you can easily find this project on GitHub. However, I also want to say this and be completely transparent with you. I've not touched a single line of code in this repository. It is 100% vibe coded. I'm honest with you guys. But surprisingly, it works pretty well. So I was not running into major issues. Of course, a couple of things here and there, but I was really surprised how well the Pi agent could write code for this and create the plugin. It's absolutely amazing. So once you install the plugin, you have access to it. You should see that icon here on the left side, open Pi agent. And then you have a chat window. And in this chat window, for example, here you can switch the model. When you connect Pi and log in your terminal, the Obsidian Pi agent can query all the models that you have added. And I have created 3 different modes here. Let's quickly go to the settings and I can show you this better. So here in the settings, there is a default thinking level. And here there are 4 different tool modes. So these settings basically just enable tool calls in the Pi agent. Chat has no CLI tools. Review has read, search, list only, then editing, edit, write, but no shell commands. And full agent can even execute shell commands in the background. You can also add custom instructions here. You can change the Pi executable path. And then there's also a skill directory, so you can include default Pi skills or specify a skills folder. I probably will also add prompts to this. Currently, prompts are missing, but yeah, I will probably release a new version with prompts that should not be too difficult to add. The cool thing is that it automatically adds the current file as context. You can see it here. So whatever file you have opened will automatically be sent with the query. So then you can see the agent is starting to think. Currently, we have no visibility what exactly the agent is thinking or what it's doing in the background. I probably need to update this at some point. But here you can see the summary is being created, and once it is finished, it will automatically be converted to Markdown rendered files. You can also queue messages here, for example, summarize your changes. When the agent is still running and you send a new message, it will be queued here and then executed automatically when the agent is done. Of course, you can also cancel this action here, remove queued message or cancel the entire processing. And I'm also supporting threads here. So you can fork the message, you can create a new chat, and you can change the name of the chat. So for example, demonstration. So here, for example, you can see all the chat history and you can see what is currently running. It also supports multi-threading. So you can easily just let one thread be processed and then add a second one and work in that in parallel. You can also add some threads to favorites, so then they are added on top of this. I mostly use this when I'm researching YouTube videos and topics, so that is pretty useful because I'm not only managing my HomeLab here in Obsidian, I'm also managing my YouTube videos and all other projects for work and private stuff. And then the Pi agent is super helpful with this. Again, if you want to test this project, go to the Obsidian marketplace, add it to Obsidian, feel free to contribute, fork this project, or help improving this with bug reports and stuff like this. So that's a pretty cool project. And again, it's completely vibe coded. There might be the one or another issues. So use it with caution. But I think it could be super valuable for us. So yeah, these are basically all of the reasons why I switched back to Obsidian. As you can see, I have much more control of the data, how it's presented, what AI workloads I can use in my documentation and note-taking systems, and it is super fast. And of course, this is so much different when you're using a system like Notion or Confluence. I still do not think that these systems are bad. I want to be clear here, yeah? So Notion, Confluence, and other systems are probably much more polished when it comes to this all-in-one workplace. It has much better databases, so you don't need to fiddle around with CLI tools like mdbasequery or stuff like that. That all works much better in these bigger platforms. And for a lot of people, that might probably be the better choice. But for my workflow, if I want to have full control over the data, over the tools, over the AI subscriptions that I want to use for my documentation and project management systems, I think simple Markdown files are just the best. And Obsidian works great for me, but you can certainly also think about using any other Markdown-based tool like Joplin or Logstash. I know some of you guys prefer these kind of tools. Not a problem at all. Just run the Pi agent in your terminal and then use whatever you like as an interface for these Markdown files. It actually does not really make so much difference when you use these simple and portable tools. But yeah, that's just my opinion about it. No, I'd like to hear yours. What do you think about this? Hopefully it inspired you to think about your project management and how to work with AI tools in your HomeLab. Please let me know. if that was interesting and what else you want to see. And of course, thank you so much for watching. A big thanks goes out to all of my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube. You guys are really amazing and make all these free tutorials and videos possible. And of course, I'm gonna catch you in the next one. Take care. Bye bye.